This is the story of the last superpower. A country everyone keeps predicting will fall too divided, too indebted, too chaotic. And yet, it keeps rising. Why? Not because of armies, not because of money, but because the map itself is rigged in America's favor. A landscape that protects it, a river system that feeds it, and a geography so powerful that the rules of global power weren't written around America. They were written by America. Every time an empire collapses, the world asks who will lead next. But when you look at the map, you realize the real question is why anyone thought the US would fall at all. Every few years, someone insists America is finished, too divided, too indebted, too weak. But those arguments ignore the real engine of power, the land beneath a nation. Geography decides how easily you can feed your people, move goods, or defend your borders. Look at Russia, a massive flat plain where armies can march for hundreds of miles with nothing to block them. That single fact has shaped its entire history. Good rivers, fertile soil, and natural barriers don't guarantee success, but they make winning cheaper and survival far more likely. That's why some nations rise, while others fight uphill forever. Why do some places spark civilizations while others never rise at all? To find the answer, you have to go back, way back, to the first humans leaving Africa, wandering into the unknown. They weren't choosing randomly. Without realizing it, they were making the same calculation every successful society still makes today. Where can we drink? Where can we grow? Where can we survive long enough to build something bigger than ourselves? And nature had favorites. Some regions offered everything at once. A river that fed you, land that rewarded you, barriers that protect you. Take the Nile. It wasn't just a river, it was a rhythm. Every year, like a cosmic metronome, it flooded and retreated, leaving behind a strip of black soil that never stopped giving. Its banks were natural highways, straight and open, letting ideas and goods travel faster than anywhere else. And beyond that strip of green, deserts, harsh enough to stop armies, gentle enough to leave Egypt alone. That combination with predictable food, effortless movement, natural defense, wasn't luck. It was a blueprint, a geographical cheat code that let Egypt stay stable for nearly 3,000 years. Civilization didn't just happen there, it was invited. For most of history, people lived in scattered pockets. Then, farming and trade changed everything. More food meant more people. More people meant more competition for land. The world was getting crowded. Kingdoms bumped into each other, merged, split, and fought. Europe turned into a chessboard of constant wars. China's dynasties rose and fell. Africa's empires shifted with the trade winds. As population soared, geography became both a blessing and a curse. Flat, fertile lands filled quickly. Mountain nations stayed isolated. The places with the best rivers and ports gained wealth and power. Technology later allowed humans to build canals, bridges, and ships. But even in the industrial age, the same old rule applied. Some countries start the race closer to the finish line. And that brings us to the biggest winner in the geography lottery, the United States. If you could design the perfect country from scratch, you'd end up with something that looks a lot like America. A vast stretch of temperate land, rich in resources, with two enormous oceans acting as both moat and superhighway. In the middle lies the Mississippi River Basin, a web of waterways so connected and flat that it has more navigable miles than the rest of the world combined. That means grain, coal, oil, and goods can travel thousands of miles for pennies. It's like having a natural conveyor belt running through the country's core. Then there's the Louisiana Purchase, the deal that changed history. In 1803, the US bought a third of the continent from France for just $15 million, or about $340 million today. At the time, no one realized it was the best investment in human history. That land, America's interior, became the world's breadbasket. If you priced it today, it would be worth tens of trillions. Those plains, rivers, and ports gave the US a built-in advantage no other country could match. It could feed itself, trade with itself, and defend itself all at once. While Europe tore itself apart through 2 world wars, the US sat behind its ocean walls, untouched and booming. Factories kept running, crops kept growing, and when the smoke cleared, the American continent was still standing tall while others rebuilt from rubble. That wasn't luck, that was geography cashing in. China is massive, powerful, and ancient, but it's also boxed in by its map. Its coastline faces a single ocean, the Pacific, and that ocean isn't friendly. Japan, Taiwan, the Philippines, and Vietnam all sit like sentries along its edge. Almost every major Chinese shipping lane passes through narrow, vulnerable straits. One blockade, and 80% of its imported oil could vanish overnight. That's why China is obsessed with building alternate routes, roads, rails, and pipelines through Pakistan, across Myanmar, into Central Asia, trying to reach the Indian Ocean. But mountains, deserts, and politics make those routes fragile and expensive. Inside the country, geography adds more challenges: a rich modern coast and a poor mountainous interior. Uniting them requires constant control and huge spending. China's power is real, but its map ensures it will always have to fight gravity to hold it together. Africa is 4 times the size of Europe and bursting with natural wealth: gold, oil, fertile soil. Yet for centuries, it's struggled to convert that into broad prosperity. The reason isn't people, it's pathways. Many of Africa's great rivers, like the Congo or Niger, crash over waterfalls and cliffs, cutting themselves off from easy transport. The coastlines, smooth and straight, lack the deep natural harbors that make shipping cheap. And strong ocean currents constantly dump silt and sand into the few ports that do exist. Keeping them open means endless dredging and expense. The result is tragic geography. It's often cheaper to trade between Africa and Europe than between 2 neighboring African countries. Where infrastructure manages to overcome these barriers, growth surges. But starting that race is always harder. Geography didn't curse Africa. It just gave it a maze where others got highways. On a globe, Russia looks invincible, sprawling from Europe to the Pacific. But size can deceive. Its western border is flat, wide open, and has been the invasion route for armies since history began. Napoleon marched through it. Hitler did too. Each time, Russia survived, but only by losing millions. Because it's so exposed, Russia has always craved buffers, neighbors it can control or influence. Ukraine, Belarus, the Baltic states, they're not just nearby countries, they're breathing space. To Russian leaders, losing them feels like leaving the front door open. There's another problem: ports. Russia has very few warm, deep water harbors connected to its main territory. Northern ports freeze in winter. Southern ones rely on narrow choke points like the Turkish Straits. That's why Russia has long meddled in the Middle East. It's less about ideology and more about access to the sea. In short, Russia has land but not leverage. Its geography gives it scale but not safety. For centuries, Britain's geography was its superweapon. An island with deep ports and 360-degree ocean access, it could trade with anyone and invade almost no one could reach it. That security let it build ships, colonies, and the biggest empire in history. But then technology shrank distance. Planes could cross the English Channel in minutes. Missiles ignored water altogether. The moat that once kept Britain safe became irrelevant overnight. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic sat a country with Britain's sea access, but also something the UK never had: a continent's worth of farmland, rivers, and resources. When the 20th century arrived, the power baton passed naturally from the British Isles to the American mainland. Not because Britain failed, but because the geography game changed, and the US had the better board. Every empire in history eventually faces the same 3 questions. Can it feed its people? Can it defend its borders? If you can say yes, you have the base layer of a superpower. Everything else, culture, politics, technology, builds on top of that foundation. America, for all its flaws, still answers yes every time. It can feed hundreds of millions. Its oceans and alliances make invasion nearly impossible. And its rivers, railways, and ports tie it to every major market on Earth. Rivals can grow, but replacing the United States would require replacing the geography that built it, and that's not something you can out-innovate. People have been predicting American decline, yet the map hasn't changed. The rivers still flow, the plains still feed, the ports still open wide to the world. Politics can shift, economies can wobble, but geography? Geography endures. And until the Earth itself rewrites its blueprint, the country that won the geography lottery will keep cashing the checks. From ancient rivers to modern superpowers, one truth never changed: geography decides the game. And in that game, America drew the winning card: safe borders, rich rivers, open oceans. Empires rise and fade, but maps rarely move, and that might be the real reason the US still leads.